Well, howdy folks, welcome back to the shop. So today we're going to troubleshoot this push mower, and hopefully it helps you out there to understand what most common problems are with these push mowers. I actually do know what the problem with this is, but beside the point, let's step through and figure it all out, and then we'll go ahead and get it fixed and get it running. So the first thing that I always like to do anytime I get a push mower is kind of do a visual inspection. Find out what it looks like. Is there anything missing? Is there hoses cracked? Is it clean? Is the oil clean? All that stuff. Can you see any water in the fuel? So I already checked the oil, it's good. The gas, I drained some out. I didn't see any water in the fuel. And how you do that is put a little bit of water in the bottom of a clear container, like a mason jar or a plastic cup or something that you can see in the bottom, and let it sit there for a little bit. And usually you can see the water floating at the bottom. You'll see these little droplets in there. I did see a little bit of debris in there, nothing major. And then my first initial inspection is the air filter was completely missing. So I don't know if this thing sucked up water. I don't know if there's any issues like that. And the other thing I noticed is the fuel line over here, and I'm going to bring you in a closer shot here. There's a slight crack right here, and I don't know why, but the line could be drying out, just not sure, but there's a slight crack in it. It doesn't leak while it's sitting here, but if you touch it a little bit, it'll start leaking. So next thing we're going to look at is spark. Let's make sure we have spark. So let me turn you around here, and let's start stepping through this. All right, so over here's what I was talking about. You can see the air filter is completely missing. The plate here is still there, and here's that crack. I don't know if you can see it, but if I move this just right, like right there, you can see the fuel, it starts coming right out. So there's a crack. Let me bring it over here a little, and you could see that crack plain as day right there. And then also you can see all the oil buildup and everything on this side. The other thing it's missing is the primer ball. Before we get into all that, because that's actually what's wrong with this, it's the carburetor's dirty and the fuel hose, so I don't know if debris got in here or whatnot, but the carburetor needs basically rebuilt. We're probably just going to clean it and see how well it goes for us. But the first thing is to check the spark. So looking at this side, I already loosened up the spark plug, but the spark plug is older, but it doesn't look that bad. And you should check the gap on it just to make sure that somebody else didn't do something. And it's supposed to be around 30 thousandths, and you can see it's pretty much right there. So, and that's what this here is. You can use it to open or close this gap if you need. So one of the first things we're going to do is put a spark plug tester or a spark tester in here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but all right, so there's plenty of good spark. If nothing else, you might have been able to hear it snapping. So the next thing is let's check the spark plug just to make sure. And this might be difficult as well. You got to be really careful doing this too, because you can get zapped. All right, so I could see the spark. It was definitely sparking across the electrode. So this spark plug's not bad. So we're going to go ahead and put him back in. And they aren't really that crazy tight, so don't go crazy on that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the carburetor off. I will tell you, if you put your thumb over top of the carburetor here, act like and choke, the thing will start up and run. So that tells me that this is definitely in the carburetor. I am going to take all this off. I want to clean the gas tank out, and it'll make it easier for me to get to this hose. And I want to make sure that everything else inside here looks good, and I'm probably going to hose it down as well. So let's get started in getting this thing apart. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do, since we know this line's not any good, we're going to go ahead and get this fuel line clamped off, and then we're going to go ahead and take all these bolts out. And the heads of these are all 5/16 on this engine. For the time being, we're going to lay that there only because we need to get the carburetor off so we can get to the back side of that hose clamp back there. So I am going to take the muffler off of this. It's easier to get to the carburetor bolts too. And surprisingly, they come out with no problem too. It makes it so much easier to get to these 2 bolts here to get the intake manifold off on the carburetor. But let's go ahead and get this off. All right, so after we got this taken off, this just slides up. And you can see that this engine it's just dirty. So I don't know if it was sitting for a long time. You know, I don't know the history on this stuff. And really, it doesn't matter. So this is a breather tube. We're just gonna pop that off. And everything there don't look too bad. So we're gonna take these 2 bolts here out, and it's best if you have a big Phillips screwdriver. And luckily, they come out with no problem. Okay, and I was just gonna say it, but it did fall off anyway. Is be careful when you're doing that. Is if you're gonna try to reuse these gaskets, try not to pry at them. A lot of times, hitting them with the butt of your screwdriver there will a lot of times knock them loose, and it won't rip the gasket. So we didn't rip that gasket, so we are going to reuse that. Next thing you need to do, but get these linkages all taken off, and a lot of times you just twist or pull them and they come off. So next we're going to take this clamp off, and that's what that bucket was for. So now that we got everything taken apart here, we're going to lay that in here too. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this all cleaned up and everything, and then I'll bring you back, and then we'll start taking apart the carburetor. But I think I'll probably get the pressure washer out or something here and get this all cleaned up. And you don't have to do that. This is the only reason why I'm doing it is I'm going to be keeping this for my own personal use. All right, so the first thing I'd like to do is I put a little bit of gas in here, and we're just going to go ahead and get the outside of this carburetor and the intake manifold cleaned up a little bit. All right, so we got that far. Let's start disassemble. We're going to take these 2 screws here out. And other than the screws, this piece here is being thrown away because we have another one already. The only thing we want to save is that O-ring that was in there. Now we're going to take these 2 bolts out, which were, they look like they're 3/8 on one side and 7/16 on the other. Okay, so now we got that off. That gasket appears to be all right. Just do a final clean of it. Once we get that clean, we're just going to set that aside, and then we'll go ahead and get these bolts all cleaned up too. So after that, we're going to take the float bowl off. So get this out. We're going to lay him down in here. Okay. And I'm surprised to see that this actually has a brass float in it. Most of the time they're all composite now. Just pop this pin. We'll lay him down in here. Look at the needle valve. So far, I see a little bit of debris in here, but not bad. I mean, it's surprisingly enough, it's really not that bad. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just get everything kind of cleaned up, wiped down, and I'll bring you back. All right, so we're pretty much ready to put it back together, but I wanted to make a good point here is whenever you're cleaning these carburetors, either get carb cleaner, even brake cleaner works fine, but spray it in every single hole and see if you could see it coming out any of the other holes. A lot of times you don't know the passages inside these carburetors. This one here I didn't, but I was able to spray in this one here, and it sprayed out. There's actually 3 little holes inside there, so I know that those were clear. Also some fluid come out of this hole here, which I didn't realize that was there. And I sprayed down through there, and then there's a choke tube, and then this tube here. Everything, make sure you blow through and either see. I like to use, like I said, brake cleaner or carb cleaner, because you can see the fluid coming out, so you know that that passage is clear. And the same thing with the main jet that's on the bottom of the float bowl. They're actually marked on the bottom. This one says 199, but spray in all these little holes. There's a little hole here, and then down through, and it should come out these 2 bottom, and everything like that. But once you get that all done and everything's cleaned up, that's pretty much it. they're rather simple carburetors here. This is a Tecumseh engine. I'm not a fan of Tecumseh carburetors. I've never have been. I don't know why someone has this threaded in all the way. I was going to do that, but I haven't got there yet. But anyway, we're ready to start reassembling this thing. All right, guys, you can see we got everything cleaned up, so let's start putting this together. So we got this emulsion tube. There is an O-ring. It sits all the way down in the bottom down there. It's a little bit of a pain to get out, but I got new O-rings on this, so we're going to drop this guy in there. And you can just use a screwdriver or something, just push it down in, and can't really see it from that side, but if you look in there, it's right there. So it'd come up through already. And then whenever you screw this bottom main jet on the bowl, this goes up against that O-ring, so it pushes it right in place for you. All right, so I usually just put the needle right on the float there, and then you can usually just drop this guy right down in there. And then go ahead and get the pin installed for that. All right, so I'm not gonna mess with the float height only because there was nothing wrong with it before, so that I don't really see a reason to do anything with it. So we did end up getting a new O-ring for the float bowl. So that just goes on like that. And then this guy just sits right over top, just pretty much like that. And then your main jet goes in. And then you just snug it up. So the only other thing that has to go in is this other jet here, and that goes right in the side here. This is a non-adjustable carburetor that Tecumseh makes. So all your adjustments are done with the main jet and this side jet here. And don't go crazy tightening that. Next thing we got to put in is our primer ball, and the easiest way to put these in is you put it in a socket, like a 3/4 or 19 millimeter works good, and then you just pretty much push this in. And sometimes you can just push them in, and other times just tap them in just like that. So now it's in there, looks good. So that's pretty much it with the carburetor. They're pretty simple. There's not a whole lot to them with these things. So we got our new air filter. We're going to go ahead and get part of this installed. So we're going to put this guy on. And that was these two screws here. And again, you don't go crazy tightening these. They were pretty tight when I took them out though, I remember. And then I mean, so there's the whole carburetor assembly pretty much. So we might as well go ahead and get the other part of this put together here. So this just went on there. And remember, these just went through, and the nut was on this side. Remember, that guy was on there just like that, and same thing, nut goes on this side. All right. So one of the things I did want to point out is, remember I said about the fuel line, and look here, you can see how it's all cracked up. So we went ahead and got another fuel line. So we'll go ahead and get that installed. All right, so that's pretty much it here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring the rest of the mower up here, and we'll start putting it back together. Let me get that set up here, and I'll bring you right back. All right, so we're ready to get this thing put back together. So here's our carburetor, and you can see the engine cleaned up extremely well. So whenever I had this cover off everything, I took and pressure washed everything to get everything cleaned up, and you could tell it cleaned up really nice. So the first thing we want to do is get our linkages put on. And sometimes they can be a little bit of a pain, but that's the governor one. And let's get this guy hooked in there. And that's pretty much it. Now we'll get this guy screwed on. And don't forget to hook that hose up too. And get this other bolt put on. And these don't get crazy tight either. All right, let's go ahead and get this hose put on before we forget it. So that's the breather tube. So you can see that's pretty much it. You can see everything seems to be moving free. Everything looks good. So let's get the exhaust put on. And there is no gasket on this guy. I thought that was kind of strange, but that's how they did it. And the same thing, these don't get tightened very much. You don't really have to watch me putting the cover and stuff back on, so let me get the cover put back on and let's throw some fuel to it and see if it starts. All right, folks, there you have it. It is all together, so let's get some fuel in it, put it on the ground, and let's see if she starts up. All right, guys, here lies the final truth to see if she starts. Pump it 3 times like it says. Let's give her a pull. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Seems to run good. Everything seems to be working fine. So the only parts that was really used was a new air filter housing, and the adapter piece to the carburetor. I did buy a float bowl gasket. Other than that, there's really no other parts that was used. I did have the gaskets for the intake manifold and stuff here, so yeah, I just happen to have them laying around, so I don't have a description on the parts on that. But I will leave all those parts in the description down below. And thanks for watching, and take care.